I am Brianna, and I am a current freshman studying in the University of Pennsylvania. During the application season last year, I was also accepted into the University of Cambridge, specifically St. John's College. And because I applied for economics as my course of study, and I know that currently many students are receiving interview invitations from their respective colleges, no matter if they're applying to Cambridge or applying to Oxford. So I want to take the chance to use this video to talk about my economics interview experience, what happened on the interview, and how you may get better prepared for the interview. Yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So the college I applied to in Cambridge was St. John's College. For St. John's, their economics interview, there was only one for each applicant. Because I know that for many other colleges or like other courses of study, they may have multiple interviews that each lasted about like 20 minutes. But for me, I had a 45 minutes interview for St. John's College, and that was it, the only one interview. So what happened in my interview? The first part of my economics interview was about current events, current affairs. We basically started talking about a recent economic news that I read about, and like my thoughts and like how economics is related and connected to this event. And there was some discussion about the topics that I was interested in, and some of the underlying assumptions about the economics as a subject on its own. And then after like the talk about an economic event, we went on to discuss the article that we're required to read. So for me, for my college, the interview process, like a couple of days prior to the interview, my college sent me an economic article, which was from The Economist. And then I was required to like read through this article and like in very fine detail, and then I was instructed that be prepared to talk about this article during the interview. And like during the actual interview, we were not allowed the article, so like we have to talk about it based on our own memory and our own understanding of the article on its own. So so during the interview, we basically went over this article and talked about like different kinds of issues that it was talking about, some of the basic definitions that was mentioned, and as well as like how are different kinds of arguments constructed, how are they related, and etc. Yeah, to be honest, the article part of the interview was not as difficult as I expected it would be, because like I was expecting a lot of like personal insights input into the article, but like I feel like it was more based on your comprehension of the article, whether you understood the concept or not, and like whether you can like understand and sort through the fine logic of the entire article and connect them together to produce like a coherent summary, I guess. Yeah, that was basically about it for the article. And then we moved on to the mathematics part, which I believe is like a huge portion of the economics interview, no matter which school you're applying to. Because I feel like for UK schools, they really look for an applicant's mathematics abilities. For mine, they gave me a function, and I was asked to do a couple of like operations on it, including drawing the graph, including like finding some of the extreme values and finding and then like extending from a specific case of this function to a more general case, and then find some regularities and find some trends and explain like what you can get from these trends. So like for this section of the interview, it was sort of like, I would say, a little bit difficult for me, because I didn't get through the entire question. They prepared a lot of like small sections within the mathematics portion of the interview, and like depending on your strength in math, you can go like as little or as far as you are able to. And yeah, they do have, I believe, a lot of small portions prepared for you. For me, I went through for like about 4 or 5 sections of the problem, and then I believe there was like a couple of other sections left, but like because we didn't have enough time to do it, we just cut from there and went to the next section, went to the next portion of the entire interview. Yeah, in terms of how like the math section was conducted, because the interview was online for me, and I believe it will also be online this year. I had this like tablet where I can use my stylus and to draw on it, and I would share my screen and then write down my process of how I was solving the problem while explaining to my interviewers like how I thought, like how I came up with each of the steps that I intended to do, and what are like the reasons behind using each of the different functions and how I solved them, and yeah, stuff like that. And then during the questions, when I was stuck, they offered me some of the help that I needed that like prepared me to move forward in the question, and I found those help very helpful. Yeah, that was basically for the math section. And moving on to the last part of the entire interview, it was like the interviewers showed me a short paragraph, and I was basically asked to read this paragraph and understand its logic and try to find the logic flaws in it and how I can like make the paragraph more cohesive in terms of logic. I feel like the purpose of this section was basically to test my critical thinking abilities, and yeah, it was like I was initially not very sure like where the logic flaw was, but then I approached it with my own answer and share my perspective and my line of reasoning in terms of how I got my answer. And the tutors that were interviewing me, they sort of offered me some help, and I was eventually able to find out the logic flaw. And yeah, that was basically all of the entire interview, and 45 minutes I would say. After that, it was a Q&A section, and asked one question and then they gave me an answer. So that was it. We said goodbye, and then the meeting ended and the interview ended for me as well. Okay, now after giving you a brief overview of my Cambridge economics interview experience, it's time for me to give a couple of tips for you to better prepare for the interview and for you to show the best of yourself during Cambridge or Oxford interview. Yeah, so I guess the first tip that I want to give to you is really know how to think out loud. I think this point has been emphasized in a lot of the college's website, where they were stating what is expected during an online interview with your college. So, and a lot of the problems that you'll encounter, especially like for econ, the mathematics section, you would be required to like write down the process of your thinking while explaining how you're thinking to the tutors, to your interviewers. So knowing how to explain your thoughts and like saying what you're thinking while you're writing down stuff is very important for an economics interview, for a Cambridge interview or Oxford interview in general. Yeah, my suggestion is just like maybe practice explaining how to solve a problem to your friends prior to the interview while like writing down the process for them, so that you can have a better sense of how you can like simultaneously explain and like in your mouth while writing writing with your hand. That process, like that skill is very important, and that is able to show that you know what you're doing and you know why you took each step in approaching the problem, and that shows the tutors and the interviewers that like you're a very logical person and you can approach a problem with a series of steps that would each lead you to a deeper depth, I would say. Yeah, this is the first suggestion. The next suggestion that I want to give for economics applicants specifically is to like highlight on your math skills as well as your critical thinking skills. So even though it is like technically an economics interview, I feel like a large focus of it is on your math capabilities, and your critical thinking abilities. In math section, apparently it is pure math. It did not involve a lot of economics, and as for a lot of the reading comprehension problems, you would actually it is more testing more of your critical thinking skills than your economics knowledge per se. So make sure you practice these skills and like to hone on your abilities in these areas, and they would really help you a lot. Learn the styles of argumentation, learn the logic of an article and stuff like that. Yep. And the next tip I would say is specifically for those students who are given an article like as a preparation for the interview. So I feel like when you're given an article, it is very important that you read through it very carefully for multiple times. Highlight the parts that you think are important, find the trends that are emphasized in the article, and then like create a logical outline for your article for the article that you're reading, and then so that you would have a good idea of like the entire content of your article. For example, if your article is arguing for a specific standpoint, you would want to know like what are each of the reasons that article has given to you, and you would organize them and know like what's the connection between each of these arguments. Are they like connected? Are they like from a shallower level to a deeper level, or like are they different aspects of the same problem? Make sure you know those. And then I would say find some of the interesting points that you would like to talk about for your article and prepare on that. Yeah, besides, I know that for a lot of the economic articles, there would be some graphs and images. Focus on those graphs and images and very carefully, and then like see, know what each graph is talking about, know what's on like the axes, know what the trend is showing, find the irregularities in the trend, and know like why that would be the case. An example would be like a trend of an economic indicator, and there's a dip in 2008. You would know that this might be because of the financial crisis that happened at that time, and then like you would just know that why this trend is like that and why there are irregularities at certain points. Yeah, that is basically for the article. And then I feel like a last tip I would give is to make sure that you have actual knowledge in the topic areas that you specify in your personal statement. I know that for a lot of students, they would write like their specific interest within an academic subjects in the personal statement. If you wrote that, you would apparently you should know like what is in that field and why it is interesting to you, and try to use the perspective from that specific field to explain certain economic phenomena, like any kind of phenomena in general. So for example, if I had written, for example, my interest in behavioral economics and applying for an economic study at Cambridge, I would then make sure that I know like the basic assumptions of what is behavioral economics. I would try to remember some of the, for example, some of the heuristics in behavioral economics, and try to use them to explain an economic phenomenon that is happening and how I can like use the insights from my interest area to solve these kind of problems or like to interpret them. So yeah, these are very important. Make sure you know what you have written in your personal statement, and try to use your deep knowledge in that area to solve and approach many of the problems that you'll be talking about. That like shows your deep interest and passion in the subject area that you're applying for, and like I think it's pretty apparent when you know what you've written and when you love what you're talking about. Yeah. Okay, in general, that is basically every tip that I would want to give to all of you. And I know that the college application process for the UK can be a very daunting process, and it can create a lot of stress, but don't worry about it. Everyone has lived through it before you, and I trust all of you guys. So yeah, make sure you review many of your knowledge in the subject area that you're applying for, and practice speaking with your friends prior to the interview, and then just be yourself and show them your passion and show them who you are, show your personality, and then the rest we would just trust the process and wait for the best result to come. Yeah, good luck to all of you on your application process, and I'll see you next time. Bye.